What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Blue Root Pod. It's Dives, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. Well, here we are. I hope you enjoyed our Summer Sixers Summer League content over the last several weeks. But here we are. It is 4 days away from training camp, and we are Pokemon transforming into everything and anything Eagles player development. If you guys like what you see, make sure you hit like and subscribe below on our YouTube page, and you can find the Blue Root Pod on iTunes and Spotify. Please give us a 5-star rating and leave a review. Would be totally awesome. On tap for today, Eagles training camp is starting next week, and we're going to give you our top 5 Eagles players under 24 years of age. Thanks for watching, guys. Go Birds! What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Blue Root Pod. Let's welcome our guest today. You can find Adam on Twitter at Adam Sports. That's SCH Sports. What's up, man? How you doing today?
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me here. Don't think I've done a pod with you since before the draft, so good to get back in the saddle here. Get into Eagles football with training camp starting soon. Always an exciting time. And new Twitter handle. If any of you followed me before, at Buster Ducks. That's now changed. It's at Adam Sports. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So today we're going to do a little Eagles top 5 most important young birds moving for this season. We don't know our list. We made a top 5 list. We're going to count down from 5 to 1. Ready to do this, Adam?
I'm ready. And yeah, I don't know Chris's list, so if you hear us start arguing, it's genuine. We have no idea what's going on here.
Nah, man, this is how we roll at TPL. This is let's do this. All right, so let's start off with number 5. Adam, do you want to start us off?
Sure, I'll kick us off, and I'll just say for everyone who's wondering, so there's no confusion, this is players who are under 25 years old as of today. Today's July 20th. So if you're saying, why isn't a guy here? He might just be too old at this point. So number 5 for me is defensive end Josh Sweat.
Woo!
4th round pick last year. Dealt, I think, with some injuries last year. Just didn't really make an impact. I think our defensive end depth is pretty old. Brandon Graham's 32. Vinny Curry's 30. Chris Long retired. There's a hole in the rotation for a defensive end to step up. And if he can be that guy, I think it would be a big boon to us.
Awesome pick. He is not on my top 5. There's another defensive end that's on my top 5. But yeah, for whatever reason, defensive end is a little lacking in depth this year, which is kind of odd. You had Michael Bennett leave. You had Chris Long leave. Definitely, Josh Sweat should be on that list. That is a good one. He's a guy that, the Eagles are going to give him a lot of snaps. Definitely one to watch for in training camp. My number 5 is Cre'Von LeBlanc. He is just obviously one of my favorite players. This is a guy that stepped in, I think it was like week 11, maybe something around there. But basically this is a guy that was one of their defensive MVPs last year. He played 8 games. He finished with 24 tackles. He had a pass deflection, but his main reason for being on this list, and I had to put him on this list because he had some of my favorite moments in the playoffs last year. He was one of the biggest reasons for the Eagles turnaround. I think when they went 5-1 at the end of last year. But his performance in the playoffs against Drew Brees, that interception he had on the first play of the game is pretty much the biggest reason why I'm putting him on this list. I think he turns 25 this week or something like that. So I wanted to put him on this list. It was very important to me to make sure he's on this list.
I looked up. He turns 25, I think, in 5 days from now.
All right, so I got him on my list. He's on my top 5. I had to get a Blue Root in with Cre'Von LeBlanc. Just a huge fan favorite. His role is kind of up in the air this year. He's trying to be that slot corner, just kind of it really kind of depends right now where Jalen Mills is with coming back. Does Avonte Maddox move to safety? Because Avonte will be all over the field this year, just like last year. So I got LeBlanc. Any thoughts?
My favorite thing about Cre'Von LeBlanc is that even though he's not French, I like saying his name in the most French way possible. Yeah, Cre'Von LeBlanc.
Oh man,
I looked at the roster and I think all of our cornerbacks are 25 or younger. Darby might be like 20. I think Darby's 25 or 26. All these guys are young. If it was up to me, Jalen Mills would be fired into the sun years ago. But Jim Schwartz loves him despite the fact that he can't cover anybody outside the red zone. With so many young guys and with different skill sets, I'm hoping that we see more rotation based on field position. Cre'Von LeBlanc's way better at covering in the open field, a little small in the red zone. Where somebody like Jalen Mills in the open field is more burnt than a piece of toast left in the toaster for too long. But in the red zone, he's a bigger guy, better tackler. So, I think that all of those young cornerbacks are going to be, important. But I like you getting him in here because I do think he deserves to be recognized for his performance stepping in on no notice last year.
I see the slot cornerback position the way I see in the NBA, a 3-and-D wing. A slot cornerback, it's a pass-happy league. A slot cornerback is so important. Look at Patrick Robinson. He was one of the most important players during that 2017 Super Bowl run. I loved watching Cre'Von LeBlanc's hustle, his heart, every single snap. He went from, I think it was cut twice last year. He made it onto the Eagles. And it was just basically thrown in. And I would argue he was probably a top 3 defensive MVP on the Eagles last year. Let's look at Pro Football Focus. He had in the playoffs, he was he held Drew Brees and Mitch Trubisky to a 67.8 passer rating when targeting LeBlanc. Wow. I love that guy.
I still got to put him. I just can't put him in the top 3 because we still have Fletcher Cox. We had Nigel Bradham, who is huge, and Malcolm Jenkins. I think those are the 3, but I'll give you number 4.
All right. Sounds good. Move on to number 4. Go ahead, man.
Okay. My number 4 is actually a different cornerback. I'm recognizing Sidney Jones. Whereas I think, Jalen Mills, Cre'Von LeBlanc, Ronald Darby, Avonte Maddox, they all have their strengths and weaknesses. Sidney Jones is the only cornerback on the roster who really has that true number 1 corner upside. Now, in Jim Schwartz's defensive system, true number 1 cornerback isn't really a thing because of the way he plays coverage with his cornerbacks. But still, having a guy who might be able to shut somebody down without a lot of help would be a big deal. He had the torn Achilles coming out of college. I think it was a torn Achilles. Didn't really look fully back even last year. This is really a make or break year for him, especially with our guy. With the cap crunch, we still have Jones under contract for a couple years after this year. I think it's going to be big for him to really show out and prove that he belongs at this level. He's just on this list because of his upside here. I just think he's got a higher upside than the rest of the cornerback group. So I'm hoping he really kind of stands out.
We need him, man. We absolutely need him. Do you project him to be more on the outside than the slot?
It's hard. Right now I project him on the bench, which is a problem. But, as much as I hate Jalen Mills, as anybody can tell from the past 5 minutes of me speaking, I don't think Jim Schwartz is going to bench him regardless. I think you're going to have, Maddox and LeBlanc and Jones and Rasul Douglas still around. There's just a lot of guys fighting for, not a lot of spots. I'm hoping, if he's on the bench, it tells me that bad things have happened. So I'm hoping he wins that job. But, I've disagreed with pretty much all of Jim Schwartz's cornerback decisions to date. So I'm sure this is not going to be any different this year.
That's a really good one. I 100% nailed it. I think Ronald Darby is coming back from injury, right? So I don't think we know if he's going to be a full participant in training camp. So the opportunities are going to be there in preseason. Like you said, this is a huge make or break season for Sidney Jones. He's kind of like that forgotten man a little bit. Like he's been fighting a hamstring injury for all last season. So he's Man, if he's able to kind of step up, because I think Darby's on what, a 1-year deal. Jalen Mills is a guy that like you don't really, at least for me, like you still don't really know what he is. Like, is he a number one guy? Is he more of a slot guy?
I think we know what he is. He's a great red zone corner when he doesn't need to be fast, but in any situation where he needs speed, he's just not good enough because he just doesn't have the speed. I played flag football back in the day. You could put me in the slot. I could cover anybody as long as they didn't run more than 10 yards. But, straight line speed, I was toast. I see the same thing with Jalen Mills. Obviously Jalen Mills is not a short white dude, but, in the NFL, he's slow by NFL standards. And, every team knows it, and every team takes advantage of it. And Jim Schwartz still hasn't adjusted. And, in the red zone, again, great player because you're not asking him to turn and run 15 yards down the field. But, in the middle of the field, it's just brutal watching him.
I agree. Fully agree, man. My number 4 is Andre Dillard. I don't think this is another similar to you. This is an upside pick. But Jason Peters, I don't think he missed many games last year. He was played quite a bit. But I think this is a guy that you really, really need for 2019. Is there anything more important than protecting Carson Wentz? I think you could argue that he should be in the top 3 of this list.
In a couple minutes, I will, in fact, argue that he should be top 3 on this list. Spoiler.
Let's move on. All right, so because you have a really good article on Dillard coming out and on the Blue Root. Let's move on to number 3. What's your number 3?
Sure. My number 3, I cheated a little bit. I have 2 number 3s. One of them is Andre Dillard. I think that article is supposed to be posted on Monday. I did a good breakdown of Dillard, what he did in college, combine, what could be expected of him. But I also have a 3B here, which is Jordan Mailata.
Nice.
I love watching offensive line play, but I'm not there in summer practices. I'm not there in training camp. We get to see what we see in preseason. Jason Peters, I just checked, did play all 16 games last year. He's 37 years old. Hopefully he gets through another season clean, but at some point he's going to retire. I don't think Dillard or Mailata will play much this year, even if Peters goes down. I think that you might see Sayumalo move out to left tackle and, somebody else step in at guard before you see Dillard or Mailata, just because I'm not sure that they're going to be ready right away. But, the most important thing is that left tackle spot when you're talking about protecting Wentz. I don't think Lane Johnson's going to move over from right tackle to left tackle. So one of these 2 guys, hopefully both of them pan out. Obviously, we'd love if everybody pans out. But hopefully one of these guys is ready to step in as early as next year because we just don't know how much longer Jason Peters has.
Awesome. 100% agree. Expecting big things from Dillard. What a left tackle to kind of groom underneath Jason Peters. So, wow.
And I also did mention it in my article. I think long term, if Mailata pans out, which again, none of us know what we have in Mailata. He was great in the couple of training camp games we saw, the couple of preseason games we saw last year.
He's a great guitar player. He's a great guitar player.
Good singer too. But if Mailata pans out and you have Lane Johnson at right tackle, could we see Dillard slide inside to guard? I think it's a possibility. He's the size that they like in their guards. He's got that crazy, stupid athleticism that they love in their offensive linemen. We have some holes at guard. Brooks, we'll see how he comes back from his torn Achilles. Left guard, I don't think anybody's really in love with Sayumalo or Wisniewski. So there's a hole there. I looked at guard prospects. I think the Eagles probably would have liked to get Chris Lindstrom or Garrett Bradbury. Both went off the board, many picks before then. But I would not be surprised if Mailata pans out, that if they start testing Dillard inside just to see if he can handle it.
Love it. All right. My number 3 is Avonte Maddox. Last season, he played 13 games. He had started 9 of those, 2 picks, 4 passes defended, 0.5 sacks. But those stats don't give him the justice of how important he was to the Eagles defense. Per Football Focus, he had a 60 passer rating during the regular season when targeted against. So, I mean, it wasn't perfect, but the flashes were absolutely there. It's having a guy like Avante with his speed and his versatility on defense is just so important. It's kind of interesting. I'm very excited to see what what role he's going to be during training camp. Any comments on Avante?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually didn't include any of the cornerbacks other than Sidney Jones on my list, only because in a most important list, I think it's a conversation you often have with most valuable. It's hard to be the most important where if three of these guys go down, we're still talking about three other guys who are fully capable. And, I think that's a great thing coming out of last year's misery to go into the season with depth that we didn't have last year. I think Maddox is going to find his way onto the field. I think he's way too talented not to find his way onto the field. We'll see how McLeod returns. If he's not good to go, I think Maddox's spot is at that free safety spot. I'd like to, I don't think he's quite as good a tackler as you normally like to see at that spot, but his range and his coverage abilities at that spot are great. If not, he's got to beat out LeBlanc for that slot corner spot. It's going to be, a huge battle to watch. I don't think Schwartz is going to play him on the outside, given, the bigger options he has. He tends to like those bigger guys on the outside. But I think Maddox is too talented not to find his way onto the field.
Definitely fully agree. That's like you said, that cornerback position during training camp, for me personally, is one of the most interesting ones to watch for. Which starts next week. Can you believe it? Holy crap.
Great.
Wow.
I'm going to be watching the offensive line. I'm an offensive line junkie.
Nice.
I'm going to be watching Mailata and Dillard. Vaitai at right guard. Brief aside, he doesn't qualify as a young player for this list. I think he's 26 or 27, maybe 25. But they're moving him to right guard, which is great because it means we're never going to have to see him at tackle again, hopefully. Really interested to see how that goes. You typically don't see guards with his kind of size, with his kind of build, but maybe that'll unlock the potential. So I'm going to be loving watching that. Really, all camp battles. Let's just get that football back.
I know. I hear you, brother. Like you said, you nailed it with the secondary. Finding diamonds in the rough like Avante Maddox and Cre'Von LeBlanc. You look at the first half of the last season, man. Like they got burnt in the secondary, and like having Maddox, having LeBlanc, having a high upside guy in Sidney Jones. Like I love watching that group for training camp this year. Let's move on to number 2. Go ahead, man.
Actually, real quick, then I'll move on to number 2. One last note on Avante Maddox before we move on. He was our 4th round pick last year. I remember after the draft, a lot of people were real upset after we drafted him. An undersized cornerback, wasn't really projected all that highly. I think coming out of the draft, he might have been like the least exciting pick that we made. I know personally, I wanted Dixon, the most valuable punter. I was going crazy when they passed up because, I was not, we'd lost Donnie Jones. I wasn't at all comfortable or confident in Cam Johnston. And the Eagles got it right. Maddox has been great, and Johnston ended up being, I think, one of the top 3 punters in the league last year. So just a good reminder to everybody who's going, the Eagles are stupid. Why would they take this guy? They know what they're doing.
Nailed it.
I trust Howie. Unfortunately, we lost Joe Douglas. Hopefully we can overcome that. But I just wanted to make that note because, point out that if you're coming out of this draft going, why did we draft Sharif Miller or something like that? The Eagles are not always as dumb as we think they are.
We didn't even mention Rasul Douglas, who has been a ball hawk every time he seems to get on the field. So another one to throw into that.
Yeah. I love Douglas. I think Douglas is just Mills, but better in every way. So.
Okay. Wow.
He's got the same kind of size and tackling, but he's got a hair more speed. He's also kind of got the speed problem, but he's just so much better at finding the ball, picking that ball off. When turnovers are the name of the game, I don't understand how you don't have Douglas on the field 100% of the time. I
know. I fully agree. Let's go on to number 2. Go ahead, man.
Number 2, Derek Barnett. Derek Barnett is, I believe, one of only 3 players under 25 to be projected to be a starter right now.
Just turned 23?
Yeah, just turned 23. If you've ever read my NBA stuff, Some of you watching this may only be football fans. Most of my writing is on the NBA draft. I spent a ton of time with the NBA draft. I did do an NFL draft series as well, but that only focuses on quarterbacks. But if you've ever read any of my draft stuff, NFL or NBA, you know I am a huge proponent of the age 23 leap. Basically, you look at sports, pretty much all sports. Players take a huge jump when they hit age 23. Derek Barnett's entering his age 23 season. I have massive hopes for him because if he doesn't work out, we could be in big trouble at the defensive end spot. Brandon Graham, I trust. I mean, he is, I think, 32 now, but it doesn't matter. You can put Brandon Graham out there. You know what you're getting from him. On that right defensive end, if Barnett doesn't work out, do you start Vinny Curry? I don't think he's a great option there. Do you start Josh Sweat or Deshaun Hall? I mean, Joe Ostman. It gets real iffy real quick. Yep. And I do have to point out, Jadeveon Clowney is on the market. We could fit him into our cap space this year. It would make it an almost completely untenable cap situation going forward. But I just have to point out that he's there. But I don't think it's going to happen. So don't get your hopes too high on that. But I never count on Howie Magic. But absent something like that, Derek Barnett has to step up. So he's number 2 for me this year, just because when you talk about most important, we talked about the corners. If one goes down, we have another step up. If Derek Barnett goes down or doesn't work out, we don't have a next up.
Yep. I'll just talk about it now. Derek Barnett was my number 1 most important young bird on the team. Here's a fun fact. Derek Barnett has more quarterback hits than Brandon Graham over the last 2 years, despite only playing, a handful of games. So, I mean, you see Connor Barwin's been kind of in discussion with the Eagles. That could be something that Howie Roseman looks to bring in. I think they're all watching Derek Barnett during training camp to make sure he's prepared, he's ready. Because, you look at the defensive end position, like you said, man, he's got to live up to his 14th pick status. So Derek Barnett was my number 1. Any last comments about Barnett before we move on to the next one?
No, Barnett's just got to be good.
Got to be, man. He's got to be. And let's be honest, he sealed that. He was one that recovered that fumble in the Super Bowl, correct? That got him the win. So probably did not live up to expectations for the 14th pick, but we love you, Derek, for getting that fumble. That was
you know what? Brandon Graham didn't live up to the expectations being, I think he was the 15th pick all those years ago, and he didn't live up to it until he did. So plenty of time. Yes,
sir. It takes a little bit of time as a defensive end to kind of get your spot there. Let's move on to number 1. Go ahead, man.
I don't think you gave your number 2.
It was my God. My number 2 was Dallas Goedert. He had 33 catches for 334 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. He didn't see the volume that Ertz obviously had, but I think he was a little more efficient. He actually showed some really good pass protection, I thought. That's my number 2. I think he's primed for a huge year. I think when the Eagles were at their worst last year, it was when Goddard wasn't involved in the offense. I think we're going to see a ton of 2 tight end sets. When you throw in Deshaun Jackson in there, J.C. Arcega-Whiteside, guys on the outside that can definitely take the top off of defense. I just look at that middle of the field there between Ertz and Goddard, and I'm just drooling, man. I just have dreams of, you have Deshaun on the outside going vertical, and then just Goddard just sitting there wide open in the middle of the field in that little intermediate range. Any comments about Goddard?
I love Goddard. I love Goddard going into the draft. He was actually going into the draft probably my number 2 guy for the Eagles with their first-round pick. I'm not going to say who it was behind because it's a whole nother discussion. But I loved Goddard coming into the draft. And, when the Eagles traded down, I was actually disappointed that they were, passing on that kind of talent. And then to get him in the second round, trading up ahead of the Cowboys, I would have hated playing against Dallas, killing us every year because I think he's that type of player. Yeah. I was real disappointed that the Eagles weren't getting him involved last year nearly as much as they should. The only reason he didn't make my list is because he is playing behind Zach Ertz. He is playing behind Deshaun Jackson. He is playing behind Alshon Jeffrey. Even as a great target, he's still probably fourth or fifth at best on the pecking order for targets. So I just can't consider him, as much as I love him, I just can't consider him that important when he's just still doesn't figure to be that featured in the offense. Then again, Carson Wentz loves throwing to his tight ends. Maybe more plays with Goddard, more practice with Goddard. Maybe he does, develop into that type of option.
Awesome.
So I think that just leaves my number one, a guy who I am shocked didn't make your list because obviously he's my number one. Jake Elliott.
Whoa, I love it. Okay.
Jake Elliott, the kicker. Look, that Super Bowl run, I don't think that Super Bowl run happens if Jake Elliott doesn't kick a 61-yard rookie record kick against the Giants. To have a kicker who is not only great from long range, but also has the range to get it to 60, 61 yards is just such a huge deal. Yeah, we'd love it if he made 100% of his extra points. You look around the league, it's kind of like MLB closers. You always hate when it happens, but you realize that, it happens to every team. There's only 3 kickers last year who made every extra point they attempted among guys who, started all season. Guys miss these extra points now, 33 yards. Would we like them to be a little more accurate, from that 40s range? Yeah, but, kicker is just so important that I had to put him at number one. If the kicker goes down, if you don't have a good kicker, look at the Bears. Look at what the Bears have. I don't know if you've been following what the Bears have been going through this offseason, but every kicker they bring in, they start by having them kick from 42 yards, going towards the end zone where they had the double doink. Why they haven't acknowledged that it was actually a great kick that was just blocked and focused on getting a better offensive line. Hey, I'm not the Bears. But you see what happens when a team starts getting neurotic about kickers. And to have, a guy who you can just plug in and feel good about, if Jake Elliott goes down, we're all going to be terrified. So Jake Elliott gets my nod at number one just because I don't, I just think he's that important.
That's a really good one. That was like a little Shyamalan twist there. I did not expect that, but you're absolutely right. You're 100% right. It just shows you how deep the young talent on the Eagles is this year. We're going to get flamed for this, so we might as well just talk briefly about it, but we did not have Jordan Howard or Miles Sanders on this list.
Or Corey Clement, all 3 under 25.
Wow, and I'm one of the biggest Corey Clement fans there is, and holy crap. So
you know what? And as you said, we're probably gonna get flamed for this, and I don't know if you feel the same way. I don't believe that running backs really have value. Yeah. I'm very much in that camp. I've written about it before. I don't think it was in this year's draft series. I think it was in my last year's draft series. Running backs don't have value. Pass catching running backs do. Jordan Howard's not really a pass catching back. He'll be asked to do it. Corey Clement, kind of a pass catching back. Oh. Miles Sanders can catch the ball. He got plenty of catches at Penn State. But none of these, we're not talking about a guy like Deion Lewis or James White, who's going to go out and catch 100 balls. As just pure runners, I think Jordan Howard's a huge upgrade over what we had last year. I think getting Corey Clement back, real underrated re-addition to the team. I think we really missed him when he went out. Darren Sproles just re-signed, not under 25. He'll probably get some touches. But I don't think any one of them is just important enough to know, just because I think they're all pretty much interchangeable.
If we were to do this like this time last year, top 5 most important young birds, I think probably Corey Clement would have been in my top 3, just for the fact that he had that, at back of the end zone touchdown catch by Nick Foles.
And the wheel route. End of the half.
God. Oh my.
Without that wheel route, there is no Philly special.
No. Nailed it, man. On that note, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you follow Blue Root TPL on Twitter for everything player development, for everything Eagles content. Make sure you follow Eagles TPL on Twitter. Any last comments, Adam?
Thanks for having me on. Real excited for the season. We have the hardest part about this exercise was going through and just seeing how many veterans we have on this team. There's a reason the Eagles are in the top 5 of every, contenders list. I've seen them as high as 1. They're usually, top 3. And you look at the team, it's a great group of veterans. And let's see who else shows up to support them.
All right. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at Adam Sports. Go Birds. Thanks for watching. See you guys.
Go Birds.